you all. We ask God to forgive us if we committed every mass. I confess, Almighty God, to you, my brothers and sisters, that I have greatly sinned in my thoughts and my words, in what I have done, and what I have failed to do, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. Therefore I ask Blessed Mary, ever Virgin, all the angels and saints, you, my brothers and sisters, pray for me to the Lord our God. Almighty God, have mercy on us, forgive us our sins, and bring each of us to everlasting life. Amen. O God, who raised up Pope St. Callistus, first to serve the Church and contend devoutly to Christ's faithful defiler, strengthen us, we pray, by his witness to the faith, so that, rescued from the slavery of corruption, we may merit an incorruptible inheritance through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Please be seated for the proclamation of God's word.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans. Brothers and sisters, I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes, for Jew first, then Greek. For it is revealed the righteousness of God from faith to faith, as it is written, the one who is righteous by faith will live. The wrath of God is indeed being revealed from heaven against every impiety and wickedness of those who suppress the truth by their wickedness. For what can be known about God is evident to them, because God made it evident to them. Ever since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes of eternal power and divinity have been able to be understood and perceived in what he has made. As a result, they have no excuse, for although they know God, they did not accord him glory as God or give him thanks. Instead, they became vain in their reasoning, and their senseless minds were darkened. While claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for the likeness of an image of a mortal man, or of the birds, or the four-legged animals, or the snakes. Therefore, God handed them over to impurity through the lust of their hearts, for the mutual degradation of their bodies. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and revered and worshiped the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. The word of the Lord. The responsorial psalm. The heavens proclaim the glory of the Lord. The heavens proclaim the glory of the Lord. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day pours out the word to day, and night to night imparts knowledge. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. Not a word nor a discourse whose voice is not heard. Through all the earth their voice resounds, and to the ends of the world their message. The word of God.
May the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, Lord. you're really only supposed to do the Alleluia if you sing it. And if I sang it, it would be disruptive, believe me. So it's better that I don't sing it and we can just flow normally. But I like to explain it once in a while because you think he's skipping that. What's the matter with him? But you're really only supposed to do it if you sing it. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. After Jesus had spoken, a Pharisee invited him to dine at his home. He entered and reclined at table to eat. The Pharisees were amazed to see that he did not observe the prescribed washing before the meal. The Lord said to him, "O you Pharisees, although you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, inside you are filled with plunder and evil. You fools! Did not the maker of the outside also make the inside? But as to what is within, give alms, and behold, everything will be clean for you." For our salvation, the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, so Pope Callistus, God bless us, another martyr. You have a choice on some of these days, and the first option would be the green vestments and just do the weekday, and I usually stay with the weekday readings in case you're preparing the readings that way. I don't want to throw you off by grabbing the special readings for Callistus today, so I'm just doing the weekday readings. But the bottom line here is they're just unaware. These are the holy leaders. These are the experts in the law, and these are people who are very serious about trying to live a devout life, and yet they're missing it. They're missing charity, kindness. They're missing the more important virtues in their perfect observance of all the prescriptions of the law. So they're doing all this stuff. They're doing everything they can to keep all the different, there are over 600 prescriptions of the law, and they're trying to live them all, the Pharisees. They're trying to be perfect in their observance. But within all that, they're missing some of the basic things. And so they are taking advantage of people financially. And they are, doing some other things that are inappropriate, certainly for the religious leaders. And so this is where, there's a big mismatch here between what they think they're doing and where they are. And so even in our own Catholic Church, we have people who sometimes know all the rules, and boy, they got you. If you get something wrong, they can criticize you, and they can give you the exact verse in the catechism to tell you, yeah, you're wrong, and they're all set to condemn you, and yet maybe they're missing that hard-heartedness in them is very hurtful, and more hurtful than the offense that you're creating, perhaps. So to really understand life and ourselves as we truly are. As a young seminarian, I was in the Oblates, I guess maybe 2 years, and we had to rent a Hertz truck and move a bunch of mattresses from one seminary to the other and all this kind of stuff. So, I was a young, kind of hard-charging guy, so they picked me for that. So it was me, and it was two older guys. One guy, the guy was we ended up in a truck accident is where I'm going with this, but the guy who was driving at the time of the accident, he was probably 35, 38 years old, something like that. He was a brother in the order, so he wasn't going to be ordained a priest. He entered to be a brother, which is a person who lives their life for God, but doesn't want to do Mass and the sacraments. So a brother can be an oblate religious, for example, and yet not ever want to say Mass. They came in, they want to give their life to God, but in a quieter, more low-key way. They don't want to be in the spotlight. And so it's the same oblate vocation, but a different way of living within the oblates. So anyway, he's the guy who was at the wheel at the time of the accident, the oldest guy. Then there was another guy who was maybe 28 years old, and he was a great guy, and he was kind of more or less the brains of the operation and a very skilled kind of a guy. And then I'm coming along, I'm the brand new seminarian. So we go and rent the truck and go on our way. And we're on our way down to Maryland. We're going to cross over the Delaware Memorial Bridge. And at the foot of the Delaware Memorial Bridge, this is the oldest guy now driving, the guy who's, maybe 35 or 38. And we're coming around, if you've ever done this particular approach, is we're coming around, there's kind of a big, soft hook bend there. And what happened was the car to the right of us was coming into our lane, and Big John, was yelling over to John, the driver, and said, "Hey, John, you got to get over. You got to get over. This guy's gonna hit us." So John at the wheel tries to move over, and he, on the tight part of the turn, getting close to the straightaway, on the tight part of the turn, John missed a step, so to speak, and took down a light pole. So we smashed into a light pole, and John's hitting the brakes and on. The top of the light pole comes down right over the cab, and the driver's side window, the passenger window breaks, and then glass shatters across all of us, And so we come to a stop, and anyway, we're out there, and we're trying to assess the situation. We're looking at the truck and this and that. And of course, I don't know anything. I'm just 2 years in the seminary. I'm like 19 years old, something like that. These two guys are older than me, and they seem to be in command of this thing. So John, the big John, the younger guy, the younger John is a really wicked kind of guy, and so he says, "You know what we're gonna do? You know what we're gonna do? We're going to get back in that truck and get the hell out of here." And so I'm saying, "John, we can't do that. We're oblate religious. For God's sake, we can't leave the scene of an accident, And he said, "Oh, yeah? Yes, we can. Get back in that truck." So I jump in the truck. I'm sitting on glass, all shards of glass all across the front seat. And the other guy, Brother John, is standing there. The driver is standing there. He's got a couple batteries in his hand. And he's shook up, and he says, "Are these from the truck?" And he's saying, "Damn it, no, they're from the light pole." The other John throws that stuff in the street. He says, "Get in the truck." So we get in the truck, and now we're crossing the bridge, and so we got to go through the toll booth. I'm thinking, when they see this truck in the toll booth, no question, there are going to be some questions at the toll booth. But there weren't. It looked like our window was down. We pulled through, and we went on our way. We delivered the mattresses down to Maryland, and there was another part of our seminary there, and so we delivered the stuff down. So the priest, just naturally, when we arrive, greets us at the front step, and he can't see the damage. We parked the truck so that the damage would be away from the building, and so the superior comes out. The superior of the place in Maryland comes out, and he says, "Hey, how was your drive down?" And Brother John says to him, "Oh, it was fine. Yeah, it was no trouble. We got right down and we made good time." And so, okay, now we unload all the mattresses, and we're carrying them up 4 flights of stairs and all that kind of stuff. And we get all that done. Now we get in the truck and we're driving home. So now these two guys are beginning to strategize. "You stay out of this. You're so innocent, so young. You don't know anything, So the two of them, they're strategizing. Say, "Well, when we go to Hertz, we'll tell them the accident happened on our farm." Because we had a 340-acre farm, and that's where we delivered the mattresses. Part of the seminary was first year, we spent it on a farm. And so these guys are putting a story together about what we're going to tell Hertz. And we go into Hertz. The John who was going to be the talker, he had this thing down. So he goes in and he leans on the counter and he says, "We sort of did a little damage to the truck." And so the guy says, "Oh, what happened?" He said, "Well, there was a dog in the road on our farm, and I swerved to get around the dog, and I think maybe we got too close and we hit the top of our barn." And he had this story all worked out. So the guy says, "I'm going to take a look at this truck." So he goes out and he gets back and says, "You guys did a hell of a job on that truck. Listen," so we didn't realize that some of that stuff from the lamppost came down, that it actually damaged the very top of the back of the truck, which they considered to be the van. And there was a line in the contract that said if you did any damage to the top of the truck, then you were liable for that damage beyond the insurance. So all of a sudden, now they've got to go back. We have to go back to the seminary and tell the superior at the seminary, yeah, well, part of this isn't covered. It's bad enough we hit the light pole and everything else. We didn't report it at the accident scene and so forth. So going back to the seminary, they say, now you stay out of this. You know, you're not going to be any help to us at all. I said, well, you got to tell the truth now. You can't lie to Father Murphy, our superior guy. So anyway, we go back in, they tell the story. And Father Murphy says, now look, you guys, I can't believe you did this, you know. You older guys especially, I just can't believe it. I said, well, Jim disagreed with this, believe me. He made his opinion known, but we overruled him. So they wanted to keep me clean in the thing, which was accurate, however. And anyway, so here's what happens. We go back to Hertz, and the guy at Hertz says, you know, this happens all the time. I'm so glad you came back. We'll get this straightened out. You know, we'll call the state police down in Delaware, and we'll get this all straightened out for you. But the truth is that people do this all the time. They all come in, they have a made-up story. And so it was so good of you to come back and tell us the truth. And there may be some money that you'll have to pay as an order, but, you know, we'll get this all straightened out. So we did. But anyway, what happened was we had 90 guys in the seminary up at Allentown, which is where we left from when we went down to take the mattresses down. And so what happened was the story of the Hertz truck incident became the funniest story in Oblate life. And we had 90 guys up there at Allentown, you know, and like you'd have, you know, 9 tables of, you know, 10 guys at dinner. And so everybody wanted to hear the Hertz story. And they said, sit with us tonight. We didn't hear the story. Sit at our table tonight. We got to hear about the Hertz truck incident, you know, and it went on and on. So the story lived on in a big way for at least 9 years. I mean, it just didn't end. Again and again, people would say, tell it again. Hey, Mac, sit over here. And of course, I'm the young guy. I wasn't involved in any of the accident part of it. And so I'm happy to tell the story, and everybody's delighted. Yeah, oh, that's unbelievable. But what made it even worse was a year after the accident, one of the Johns, and I were not the driver, John, we went over to Hertz and we got a tablet of Hertz stationery, and we brought that back. And we sent a letter to the other John, who was the driver, on the anniversary of the accident. And, you know, dear Mr. Brennan, as you will recall, 1 year ago today, irreparable damage was done to the name of Hertz Rental because of your carelessness at the wheel at the foot of the Delaware Memorial Bridge. So we typed this thing up, we sent it off to him. And, you know, we're thinking he's going to laugh. We're waiting for him to call us and say, hey, you guys. He never called, and we never called him because maybe he didn't like it. Maybe he's angry at us, you know, so we didn't want to bring it up. But anyway, I got great mileage out of that story, and so did the other John. We told the story again and again and again, and we never considered, because it all got resolved legally and so forth, we never considered how embarrassed the driver, John, was. We never really considered his feelings because the story was so great, and the energy it would evoke at a dinner table or whatever, a breakfast table. Everybody wanted to hear it. So it was years and years ago. You know, now I'm going to get ordained, and you know, it takes 11 years to get ordained. So I was already in the seminary a couple of years when this happened. But now, you know, gosh, so this story's been told and retold, and people said, oh, you were the guy who was at the wheel. John, you were the one driving. Gosh, you're the one who went out of control with the truck. So we never heard much of that, but people were saying it to John, and we were telling the story. Everybody wanted to hear the story. And finally, after I was ordained a priest, you know, we came along to this gospel, the gospel that we just read. And I thought, you know, that's really what happened for us. We really, you know, we were funny, we were entertaining to the community, and yet we didn't really get in touch with the inside of the cup. And the inside of the cup was that we were hurting John every time the story was told. So I never went to confession about it until after I was ordained. All those years went by, and I had told the story, you know, maybe 50 times or something over those years. So I went to see John to apologize to him. I said, John, I want to say something to you that I should have said many years ago. I'm so sorry. I said as a priest now, I'm reading the scriptures a little more seriously, and I have to tell you that we didn't realize. You know, it was so hilarious. Everybody loved it so much. And he said to me, it was with some anger in his voice. You know, he was restraining his anger. He said, it was always a great embarrassment to me. And you never stopped telling it. And this guy was like my best friend. John, the driver, was really like my best friend in the order. And I said, John, I never realized it. And he said, I know. And I couldn't understand how, as you matured, it didn't ring the bell and awaken within you. But that's what can happen, and that's really the meaning behind the story here, is that we can be living, and we're sure we're living all these things right, the teachings of the church and so forth, but within that, we can be missing something that seems small to us that might be very hurtful to someone else. And in our blindness, you know, as Jesus is saying to the apostles again and again, how blind you are. Do you have eyes but not see? Do you have ears but not hear? But for each of us, there are things that we don't see about ourselves. There are things that we don't hear. So today's gospel is really just a call to take a look at ourselves and try to get it right and look back and think, is there anything, you know, that I ought to get resolved? Should I go see somebody? So it was a great healing for John to have me come and apologize. The other John had left the order. The other John left and got married. And at my ordination, the guy who left and got married, he came to my ordination, and he had long hair in those days. This is back in the 70s. And so he says, as I come out in my vestments for the first time after Mass, he's saying, you stayed. Like all the rest of us left and got married. We all had sense, you know. Why did you stay? Why did you stay? I said, I think God wants me to do this. So it's a cute story all the way around. And the business about the anniversary letter, it was an unbelievable story, and I still love it. I still love the whole story. And both, one John, the John who was the driver, he just died about 2 months ago. But and I didn't call the other John about it, but gosh, something that was so funny for so many people, and that entertained so many seminarians, so many oblates, and other priests over the years, and I just never realized how hurtful it was to my best friend. I thought, well, John is over it now. You know, this is resolved. The legal part of it all is over, so it doesn't reflect on John in the same way. It was just a thing that happened, just an accident. And that's how I viewed it. I never realized how every time I told this story, I was breaking the guy's heart and embarrassing the guy once again. Never realized it. We weren't stationed in the same place all the time, and he wasn't hearing me tell it as often as I did, but I lived on that story, and I certainly went to confession on that one. Through the earth, work of human hands, deal. It's not a mortal sin. So, but for him, it was a spiritual crisis. And so, often we find ourselves in the binds. In the Navy, I had a job where I was transferring all the chaplains around the world, 1,000 chaplains. And, you get a guy, we send a guy to Guam. His wife loves the idea of going to Guam. We're going to go to Guam. It's going to be like Hawaii. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to go to Guam. She's bragging that we're going to Guam. Okay, they're on Guam. The guy calls me. Husband calls me. He's the chaplain. He calls me. He says, "Hey, Father, we've got to come home. We can't leave this over for 3 months." And I said, "Gee, you accepted the orders. You're asked to go to Guam, I got you out there. It's $25,000 to move you and your family to Guam. Now you want to come back. You've got an obligation from your orders that you have to stay there for at least 2 years." The guy says, "Well, we can't. My wife will have a breakdown. We can't stay." So I go in to see the admiral. I explain this. He says, "Jim, try to persuade them to stay." Anyway, I try to persuade him to stay. The guy's going to make an issue of it. So the guy goes to the head of the Presbyterian Church, different branches of Presbyterianism. But anyway, he goes to the head of this denomination, the national head. And that guy sends a letter to the admiral saying, to leave this chaplain, who's in great distress, he and his family, to leave them on the island of Guam when they are extremely unhappy and the wife is in real distress, would not only be unkind, it would be punitive. So the admiral has this letter and saying that. So he says, "Okay, bring him home." What's against the rules here? He's got in his orders, he's got to stay. But now I have to violate what says in his orders. So this is going to cost the government, a lot more money. So here's what happens. I got to bring the guy home. He's only been here a month. So I got to spend $25,000 more of government money to bring the guy home. Now I got to send somebody else out there to take his place. That's another $25,000. So it cost us $75,000 for one move. It should only cost us $25,000. So, and I'm carrying a weight on this thing, So that kind of stuff, you're in a jam, and you have to, if they investigate this whole thing, well, why did you do this? Well, the admiral said to me, the Presbyterian Church might never send us another Presbyterian minister. I got a letter here from the head of the Presbyterian Church, Jim. Good God, we don't want this in the news that the chaplain corps of the Navy is not only unkind, they're punitive toward their chaplains. Oh my God, So we can't have this happen. So in the real world, Jim, you got to run with this one. You got to wear the black hat on this one. So these are the kinds of jams we get in, and the best you can do is say, "Hey God, I'm doing my best here. This is what I have to do." So we all are in those things. If it was my mother as a waitress getting in jams, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. That's the real world. So I'd like to talk to you about the intersection of heaven and earth, because sometimes at earth you think, well, that heaven business isn't connecting too well with what I had to do at one time in my life. But I want to give you some peace about all that. You can always mention something in confession. So be at peace. Let's stand together with our prayer and we'll do some next week. Okay. Grant us, Almighty God, that we may be refreshed and nourished by the sacrament which we have received, so as to be transformed into what we